Welcome everyone to the Public Art Commission meeting on a Wednesday, which is a little bit different. Let's do a roll call. Vice Chair Shen.
Present.
Commissioner Miyagi.
Here.
Commissioner De La Garza.
Present.
Commissioner Waltuck.
Attending remotely under AB 2449, Just Cause, caring for a family member.
Thank you. And Chair Gordon, me, I am also present. Welcome. Do we have any agenda changes, additions, or deletions?
There are none.
Nadia, is there any public comment?
No one in attendance currently.
So let's see, we'll start with the Susan Zoccola sculpture that had kind of a tragic moment, has been fully replaced and restored there on the Charleston corridor. Computers being a little pokey as it sometimes does.
Yeah. There's a delay in computer one.
There it is after it was installed.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. I didn't realize how long
Mm-hmm.
the presentation is. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty long.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
So,
So this was the
three.
part. This was the part that was damaged by a car accident? Is that
Yes, that's correct. It was damaged by a car accident, and so it has been fully replaced and reinstalled. And then the next item we just wanted to let the commissioners know about is the Roth Building. I don't know if you all have been by there, but there is a lot happening, particularly in the courtyard adjacent to the fresco. So staff is there a couple times a week, installing protections, monitoring the frescoes and keeping in touch with the conservators. The conservators hopefully will be able to be on site in mid-September to begin work on the color frescoes and the testing on the grist side panels. So it's really exciting to see that coming together and that they're so far through construction, and the team has been great working with us to ensure the safety of those important artworks.
A question about the damage to that one piece. Who pays for that?
Insurance. So our risk manager is chasing all of that. Luckily, it doesn't fall to us.
Okay. Oh, what about the person that actually ran into it? Are they?
I don't know the details. All I know is we have the piece back, so I'm grateful for that. And then the third item I just wanted to call to all of your attention is September 8th, which is a Sunday, is the Midtown Residents Ice Cream Social. They have asked if the public art would host a table there, which we traditionally do. The chair and vice chair have volunteered to jump in and work on that table some and field some questions from the community, but any other commissioners who are interested in spending some time at the table, it's a great way to interact with. It's Sunday, September 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. It's a great way to, really hear some feedback from the community about public art and kind of what their desires are. And you also learn a lot too. So for some of you newer commissioners, pairing you with a more seasoned commissioner, like how to field those questions and what people are curious about. So let me know if you're interested and we'll figure out time slots for that.
Yeah, I've done that in the past, and it is, it's interesting to see everybody that comes in.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's a nice location as well.
It's at Hoover Park. And so that's it for staff comments.
Thank you, Elise and Nadia. Moving on to action items, Code Art 2025. This will be the fourth time Palo Alto is sponsoring Code Art, and we have really exciting news. So Elise, take off and explain. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So before you should have a couple of these flyers, which have some great metrics in them. I'll pass that one to him too. And so this will be our fourth time doing code art. And based on the feedback we've gotten from previous iterations, people want it bigger, bolder, longer, all of that. And so one of the trends that we have seen in the field of public art is more of the projection mapping kind of events, sort of like Let's Glow SF. Napa has a version. And of course, Glow Cincinnati is the largest new media festival in the country that takes place this October, and that's for 4 evenings. So, and that's 30 blocks worth of installations that takes place. So we're just dipping our toe in the water of going that direction. I'm not suggesting we're doing 30 blocks. But the idea is that given the what all goes into this kind of project, and to do this on the front facade of City Hall and fully encompass that with 3-dimensional projections, we needed to do a little homework about what kind of ballpark estimate this would be. So the big picture code art vision is October 16th, 17th, and 18th from 5 to 10 p.m. So we would have the projections on City Hall facade. We would have a major installation at Lytton Plaza and 4 urban interventions, which is fewer than last time, but we're going to have the larger installations are going to take up a little more space with, of course, our nightly public tours. So the idea is that the projections would continue to go each night through the following weekend. So it would be 10 nights of projections, and that there's an opportunity there for additional public programming. And I've had people throw all kinds of great ideas about silent discos, and maybe there's like a teen robotics team who wants to like come out and showcase what they're doing. Somebody was talking about a drone light show. So there's a lot of great ways we could go with this. And I think it probably warrants a follow-up study session meeting with the commission to talk about that and how the commissioners might be helpful in bringing partners to the table and fleshing out what that looks like for Code Art Weekend and that week following. And once again, it is to transform Palo Alto's plazas, alleys, and public spaces through interactive light, sound, and motion. So here's the map from last year's Code Art and the installations that we had there. Of course, you may remember that Nate Mueller was the main installation there on King Plaza. So approximately 13,000 people attended Code Art, and that's a pretty conservative number based on the metrics we gathered. 21 Bay Area national and international artists, 7 interactive new media installations. And the survey results were really telling. 98% of visitors surveyed would like to see more events like this in Palo Alto. 73% of attendees visited downtown businesses during the festival. 88% of business visitors also made a purchase. 70% of business visitors spent up to $150. And 60% of visitors came to downtown specifically to experience Code Art. So those are pretty good metrics. There's great quotes in here, and part of the staff report was all the survey results that we gathered and the feedback. So let's talk a little bit more about the projection and what that involves. So the projection would be extended. It would premiere during the Code Art Weekend and extend through the following weekend. We're looking for an immersive 3D original content by at least 3 different artists. So when I say projection mapping, what does that mean? It's a little bit different than projecting a movie onto a flat screen, right? Because the building has ribs, it has glass, it has different textures to it. So what they estimated was that 4 projectors would need to be placed at different locations in order to sort of make that facade. It could disappear, it could move, it could change, and it could appear that things are emerging from the building. So this amount would include the production team, planning and logistics, digital mapping of the building, getting a swing stage to put perforated bus wrap on the windows, projectors, media servers, sound and power, protective enclosure pods. We've got the swing stage. Labor, we need electricians, we need projection operators, all of that each night. On-site setup, So the perforated vinyl, the projectors, the servers, crowd control would all be included in that. And the idea was that we would fund this element through the private development funds that have been gathered. So in the percent for art for private development, developers can choose to either commission art on site or pay the equivalent to the public art fund. So we've been gathering those funds since 2014 when this was enacted. And only in the last few years have we been able to access about $50,000 a year. So the ask is for this year, an additional 250 to cover this installation. And it's from private development dollars. And those are restricted for this use only. So let's go on to we've got some examples. So this is a sample setup from Let's Glow of some of the equipment and projectors. So this is for a much taller and narrower building, so they fit in one pod. We would likely need a couple of different pods. You can also see in the next slide the way they cover some of those with branding. So I could definitely see having City of Palo Alto and any sponsors that we might be able to bring to the table. Huge visibility for the 10 days of the projection. And then we have some fun video samples of what this might look like. Let's see if we can get the computer to cooperate. Do you want me to play with this? Mm-hmm. What's interesting about the laser projectors is that with a traditional projector, it's all light, and the laser projector even is projecting the black. So the blacks stay really dark and you get that kind of contrast. So that's something to look for in some of these, but that's the difference in the caliber of the equipment. Was that enough, or do you have another one you wanted to show?
The reason why we showed this particular sample is that it showed a compilation of different settings and types of buildings, from monumental, say, European Renaissance and, new buildings, to just very contemporary and all glass buildings. So just to kind of like showcase the possibilities of this projection technology. Yeah, we have one more exciting video to share with us, with you, to just bear with us a second, please. Okay. Here it is. Coming up.
3D mapping projections, this is essentially the technology we're looking at. It's probably the.
Let's just trip the light fantastic together. Are you dancing?
I mean, we could watch the story all evening, but but I think you get the sense of what we're speaking of. Are there any members of the public who have a hand raised who would like to speak to this item?
No raised hands.
Okay, with that, are there any questions from the commission?
I have like 1,000 questions.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay, so just so I understand, the 300,000 is
Mhm.
from the mapping to the commission of designs by 3 artists.
Mhm.
And then once they create the design, the content, the projection, right?
Yes,
And so the iterative, the numerous projections, and that whole entire process is 300,000 for that 10-day period.
yes.
Okay, now next question. The mapping part of the equation, my understanding is that part we can leverage again and again. So in the future, if we want to have another show with projection, we can just hire the artist to create a different set of content based on the mapping.
I think once it is mapped
Yeah.
in whatever format we do, so it could be a diamond on the face, it could be a big rectangle. The mapping could be reused,
Right.
but you would need to commission a new artist to create something to work with that mapping.
I understand. So it's the measurement and then you can put the content inside that measurement. Okay.
Yes.
Third question, the 3 artists,
Mhm.
the content they create,
Mhm.
is this for a one-time showing over the 10-day period only? Or let's say come Christmas time, we'd like to do another show. Can we leverage the work and then essentially put another show?
So that's a great question. I think we, as the commissioning body, we could definitely redo it. But keep in mind, the setup and the breakdown for this is 2/3 is $200,000.
Got it.
So it's very expensive
Got
to
it.
set everything up and break it back down if we
Got
want to
it.
do it again.
Got it. I'm just trying to figure out how much of it is reusable
Mhm.
and how much of it is a one-time cost. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Are there any other? Oh, Lisa
I-
Waltuck.
Oh. who's-
So that was amazing and really amazing show that you just had us watch. I have a few questions, some about code art in general, which is this going to change the nature of what we put out our call for code art? In other words, because this projection mapping, is there going to be some element of that or light or motion like that that's going to be unique to this code art going forward? Or is that only the showcase at City Hall and then all the other criteria for the other pieces will be as they have been in the past?
I'm glad you asked that question. And yes, so the projection and the 3 artists involved with that is separate. That's bundled with the production company and the artists that they can provide us that we can work with. We have drafted the call, which is the next item on the agenda, for a major artwork at Lytton Plaza and 4 urban interventions. So those will be very much in keeping with the previous code arts.
Okay, and then so just from what you showed, the projection looks like it could be art in motion or it could be a whole story. You know, it looks like some of them are quite narrative and almost film-like. And I'm wondering if artists have to have had experience with this projection mapping type of technology, or if somebody who just had a really interesting idea could work with the engineers to create something. Like, what type of skill are we looking for in these artists? And is that narrowing our pool, or are we able to select people that have interesting ideas or have always wanted to work with motion or transformation or something like that?
What we're looking for in these production companies are that they have artists that they work with who are very well equipped to carry this off and do it. We do not have the capacity to take an artist who's never done projection mapping files and artwork before and go through that journey with them to train them. So that
So
would,
we're only looking for artists who've done projection mapping pieces.
for the city hall piece, yes.
And do we have a pool of those people, or we're going to have to put out a call? How are we finding those people?
So the company that we got this initial ballpark estimate for, they do have a pool, a roster of artists that they typically work with. And that's because we would have to go out for a competitive bid. So we need to go out to other companies. And that's part of what we're also looking for is show us the strength of the artists that you work with.
And would we be interested in some sort of longer form, like a narrative, or is it just kind of a, one, happening that is however many minutes long, and then we go on to the next one?
So, so these would be on a loop. So we costed out, for three, for three pieces. So one would be, I think it was 5 minutes, one that's 3 minutes, and one that's 2 minutes. So they would run on loops.
Okay.
So that's pretty much the way those would run.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
I have two more questions. One, when you talk about the loops, so you know how like, it will be 10 days.
Mhm.
Let's say it's 3 hours each evening.
Mhm.
Are there breaks in between? Like how many shows are there actually?
It would run continuously. And there are ways where they do these countdown clocks.
I
So,
see.
and once the company is officially selected, we have a lot of hoops to go through between now and getting into what content we want or what we desire from the artist to develop. So at this point, we're just seeing, do we have commission support to access those funds? That recommendation then would need to go to council at mid-year to access those funds because they're specific public art funds. In the meanwhile, we're going to go through a competitive solicitation. So then if and when that all goes through, then we can have more discussions about what kind of content do we
Got it.
want? What kind of direction do we want to give the selected company?
Got it.
Well, we'll have the standard panel, most definitely, to select these three artists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would suspect that's the way it's going to roll.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I have one more question.
One comment.
So exciting, we're so, I know, like, everybody's like.
Lisa has one.
Go ahead, Ben. Go ahead, Ben. I'll
When I
go.
was in San Jose about 15 years ago, we had this projection. And I think it was one of the first ones that I ever saw, and it was really cool. But
Steinken?
the technology has leaps and bounds till now. So I'm really glad that Codot is looking into something like this, and it just shows how this festival can grow with the technology that's out there. And to have something projected on City Hall is going to be so cool to see that.
That's what we're hoping. That'll be a huge draw to downtown and bring a lot of people.
Especially 2 weeks.
Commissioner Waltuck, did you have a
All
question?
right, yes, one more question.
Yes.
So just so I understand the funding, you said that we've only taken about 50,000 a year out of this fund, and now we're asking for an additional 250. So is that in any way kind of draining that pot? And would that allow us to continue to do big endeavors for code art every other year if we are dipping in at this level?
Yes, it is sustainable. We have approximately 2 million, just over 2 million in there currently. With the number of projects and private development projects that are paying into that fund, and there's lots of really large ones on the horizon, I believe it will be very sustainable to be able to continue to entertain this. This is our first time trying it. Let's try it out. Let's see how it works, and then we'll reevaluate from there.
Great, thank you.
I have another question.
Oh, can we?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm curious to understand how the building is going to be covered in this vinyl and what's going to happen to that vinyl afterwards.
That's an interesting question. I don't know what happens to it afterwards. It's basically, it's a perforated, like a bus wrap.
Right. I guess just from an environmental perspective, if the
Mhm.
whole building is being covered in this vinyl and then that's being thrown in the trash afterwards,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's something that I would be concerned about.
We will ask about it.
Yeah, I guess recently there has been a lot of developments into green, alternative green materials, green vinyls. So for example, the company who came out and just to like do the survey of the building, I know that it's the same company who we work with on aluminum graphics, you know, and there's a great variety of new recyclable green materials that there is there, you know, from aluminum to types of vinyl and fabric based materials. You know, it's like the industry is really changing, so there are environmentally friendly solutions.
So we can definitely investigate that, especially if it's only in place for 10 days, 2 weeks. So we can probably go with something that's less plastic filled.
And then as far as bang for buck,
Mhm.
you know, is this something that you've considered? Like, would it be interesting to look at doing 6 projects that are $50,000, or is this budget specifically for this project?
This budget is specifically for this project and it encompasses 3 projection artworks. Of it, like the 50,000 level, the 25 and the 25. So that's approximately how it's broken down.
Oh, please go ahead.
Hello. Hello. So my question is, why did you decide to look into projection mapping?
Great question. It's been suggested to us quite a bit for people who've been up to Napa and Glow SF, and you know, people come to Code Art and say like, wow, have you thought about doing something much bigger and something that would be, you know, a real showstopper in that way? So we've gone as big as, you know, Nate Muller's piece on the plaza. And so we really wanted to look at what could we do with projection mapping so we could try it.
So it's just, this is just an experiment, this $300,000 initial
This is,
project is just to see what it's like.
this is a one-time ask.
And you said the funds, what are the private development funds usually used for?
They have not been used much, except in the last 3 years is when we first started tapping into that. So at $50,000 a year, that is about $40,000 that's for Code Art, because while it happens every other year, we incur expenses each year in the planning and moving forward with that. And $10,000 a year for our construction valuator. So that's somebody who we have under contract when private development projects come through, and we verify the construction amount that's on their documents.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
And so far, the only money that private development funds have been used for is Code Art and then also private development oversight.
Yes.
Okay. And why 50,000?
Because that was a baseline that we determined that we needed as a rollover, and we wanted to be sure we were sharing the expenses with our city generated funds and start using some of those private developer funds.
And the private developer funds, you said they have to be used for this project, but what does that mean?
Great question. So I do have a copy of the ordinance here. So it talks about the public art fund and what the funds may be used for. The public art fund shall be reserved for the design, acquisition, commission, and installation of new works of art and art experiences in Palo Alto, or for such other equivalent artistic purposes approved by the Public Art Commission. Funds may be used for project management and administration costs associated with acquisition of new works, not to exceed 20% of the project budget, and for the repair, maintenance, conservation, and insurance of those works.
Forgive me, but that sounds to me like it could be used for pretty much anything that we're working on. Is that not correct? My understanding of what
Anything public art related.
Public
I
art.
think what the important through line is it can't be used to fill potholes.
Got it.
Right.
But it could be used for any number of other public arts projects. It doesn't have to just be used for Code Art or something like that.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Oh, and you said the 300 grand. So it's, then you said that 200,000 of it is the setup and 100,000 is the art, the production of the artwork.
Yes. The setup and the materials and the labor associated with that.
Right.
So electricians, projectionists, staffing to run the events.
And the company that you had come out here to do the estimate, are they, where did you get them from? And do we know if that's a typical fee?
That's a great question. They do Glow SF, they do the Napa one, so we've been to their events, we've seen the quality of the work. We will need to go out for competitive bids, so we will approach other companies, but they are kind of the lead production company in this field.
Is their name listed here, or we're not talking about that yet?
We weren't talking about that yet, but we will need to gather, input and whatnot from other companies.
Oh, yes, but please go ahead,
Well,
Councilman.
just
Or
a couple things for, oh, sorry.
Huggins.
Couple things for context. So back, I think it was 2014 that we established this 1% for art. And that meant that developers could either spend that on site or pay in lieu. And this is the developers who chose to go in lieu. I had forgotten that it was the ordinance, of course, details the ordinance. We don't always scrutinize carefully, but I had even forgotten that it could be for art experience as opposed to permanent art. So clearly, from what Elise described, this is within that framework. Did folks see the Post article today?
Yes.
Did I don't know if everybody, so they had a headline article kind of around $300,000 for temporary art, blah, blah. And it's, it was implicitly critical of this. So a couple of thoughts, Elise had at the outset talked about what we had, first I'd gone to all the code arts and really liked them, as did my family. That the additional spend that occurred downtown by visitors, and this I would guess would be a bigger draw, that I think it would be helpful to quantify the incremental amount of revenue that was spent, because when we look at, as a council, look at kind of different projects, there's the looking purely in terms of the value of the art. There's the value to the community as part of community services. But then there's also the economic development part, as we're really looking at how do we revitalize downtowns in an era of changed retail. And so certainly the experience of downtowns and exposing people to downtowns are significant benefits. And you may want to really dig into that and emphasize that more than you might on some of the other art. But frankly, the murals are like on Cal Avenue, other planned murals, I think really play into that value to a great degree. And historically, that probably wasn't as much of a focus of our public art. And today it's hitting both aspects. And I would encourage you to really try to flush that out and explain why it has both the community experience benefit and these others. And then so I'd also encourage you, you broke down that basically 100,000 is the mapping. And so 200,000 is just for this event. And if I understood that right, and 100,000 would be there for future versions of this. Is that correct?
The mapping was lumped in with the equipment and the staffing. So
But the mapping would be available for future similar.
that's correct.
And so I would encourage you to break those two. One between the one-time expenses and the other that are ongoing benefits potentially. Let's see. You mentioned the drones, interestingly. Someone who at Drone Art, I don't know how much you've seen it, but we have a guy who used to live here, moved to Salt Lake, who's now was one of the early companies in this. I don't know if they're the leading one. What is it? Verge Aero?
Okay.
Yeah. But they may have gone beyond us. They do these spectacular drone things now. And they look like they've become real successful, but they're incredible. Okay. So anyway, so, oh, and then the other parts related to the economic development is to perhaps engage with the Chamber of Commerce and see whether they recognize the value. I suspect they would, and that they would potentially be proponents of this, as if this kind of gets politicized of a question. Gee, that's a lot of money for a temporary art. It's 10 days now rather than just the few days of the code art. But it comes back to this question: when you bring people back to downtown, what do they come back for? At a few, it's not just the revenue generated on that occasion. And then related to that, you may know that September 21st, we have the new electrified Caltrain system. And part of that, they've just released the new schedule, and the schedule is basically a minimum, even on the lesser stations like Cal Ave, minimum of 2 trains an hour from 5:30 in the morning and 12:30 at night. And I have to look again at University, I think in the nighttime it becomes 3. And so what was predominantly a commuter line with 1 train an hour in these off times, which really didn't lend it for people to go out in the evening and go places, now it is so. And that's a big part of, I'm on the Caltrain board, and a big part of the whole recovery on ridership is tapping into other users. You can go to dinner up the peninsula or come down here. And so Caltrain may be a partner on this, both on the promotion side and get people to come from up and down the peninsula on Caltrain. And then one of the advantages, they can, they're not driving and don't have to worry about imbibing and driving. So those are just some thoughts on how to frame this in a way that is likely to have broader support.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the economics, and I'm not sure how to measure that exactly,
Well, we actually looked into with the Office of Economic Development a few different ways to do that. And there wasn't really a magic solution to this, right? So far, most of what we've been doing is through surveys. But yes, we will definitely work with economic development, see if we can find something that's a little more precise.
I think that will be helpful. And I love that you mentioned Caltrain too. I just didn't realize that change was happening. So that's very exciting. Lots to think about. My question was about the other interventions. A lot of people who come to Code Art come because it's interactive. And so now we've got this amazing show that they can see here. Will the other installations be more hands-on for our audience? Because I know a lot of them like to play when they're here.
So in the draft call we have, play is very much in it, but it needs to be interactive because we heard and saw that loud and clear in previous years. I mean, anybody who got on those helix seats and was bouncing like their lives depended on it, they loved it. It loved playing with the water and creating their clouds and everything. So the interactivity is really key. Yep.
Still very important. So we're just adding something bigger and still having the great Code Art that everyone has really come to love. And I think some of these collaborations can make it a destination. The fact that we have got that 10 days now, that's a longer period of time, that will be a big benefit. And in my mind, because we do have $2 million in the public art fund. We need to share that with the city and guests of our city. So I think this is a good investment. I do need a motion. This is an action item.
Sorry,
Oh,
can I ask one more
so-
question?
Oh, yes, you can. Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
sorry.
please do.
I was just wondering, considering the economic impact of this, how does Cincinnati fund 30 blocks of something like this? I mean, do we know other people's models of how they support something like this?
Blink Cincinnati is a team and they work full-time on this each year, and they have a lot of sponsors with their large hotels and host spaces that sponsor these installations. It's an enormous operation and they do measure the economic impact, but they have a lot more resources than we do too.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we look at the facade of the city hall again? Thank you. I'm just concerned that a lot of these images that you've shown, and I've never been to the San Francisco one or Napa or Cincinnati. I have seen this kind of demonstration, activation, but it's usually in a big wide plaza where people are passing through and stop and take a time. This is not a plaza that's getting a lot of through traffic except for during something like Code Art. And do we have any idea how many people actually have been on the plaza at any given time for an event?
Interesting question. I've seen it pretty packed before.
I can
Councilmember
answer that
Burt.
one. One of the biggest was in 2000 and January 2011, after Palo High had won the girls' state volleyball championship and the boys had won the state football championship. And we had a giant parade, thousands of people downtown. And then they pretty much all packed here. And the street was closed and it backed up all the way into Centennial Way. There's that many people. So that was the biggest crowd I ever remember. And I will note that one thing that pushed for years, and the city manager I saw had recently added to a kind of perspective item for action, is a mid-block crosswalk. Because Centennial Way had often been envisioned as this bridge between the downtown and University and City Hall, but you get there and as a result, we never activated it well. And then the restaurants kind of started taking it over. I'm trying to remember, it is on a work plan to look at whether to go forward with a mid-block crosswalk. You may want to talk with other staff about the plan for this and whether it's going to be considered to do that in advance of this. And then that would really start addressing that connectedness between university and here.
We've also had discussions about the possibility of closing Hamilton, or at least a half closure of Hamilton, to create more space so that people aren't backing up looking at it or just wandering into Hamilton across the street.
I suspect
So-
this could be big enough to warrant that.
Yes. Noted. Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
So in consideration of the dollar amount, because we're talking about the 300,000, and then also because this is going to be part of Code Art 2025, the second line item you have is the separate, the interventions, the anchor art for 70,000. So in total, it would be 370,000. What is the rough number for the prior Code Art so we can have a little bit of a comparison?
So the prior Code Art all in, we just looked at this the other day, was about 130,000. So yes, you're right. The next item, which we'll talk about in a moment, is for the anchor artwork at Lytton Plaza and 4 urban interventions.
So just to put it in frame of mind, total, it's actually $200,000 more than prior year, not $300,000 more, right?
Yes.
I have one comment. When the percent for private development in lieu fund went into place, one of the thoughts was a iconic piece of public art for Palo Alto. So I think that's still in place to try to do that, but I think this is a good use of those funds with code art. And I seem to remember when code art first started, was first proposed, it wasn't received very warmly, but over the years, it's really, really grown. And the one thing I want to say about this projection thing is, if not now, when?
So I know we're commenting a lot on this, but one thing that when I heard about this, I did some research and also thinking about what kind of impact something that is a big light installation can have. And the first thing I thought of was the Bay Bridge Lights project, and I guess what the one thing that would be interesting to talk about in the future is creating something that has a more permanent aspect, like you say, something iconic that says this is Palo Alto. For me, what came to mind was the laser lights that came out of the Twin Tower, the monument to the Twin Towers. And I know that there has been some ideas for doing laser installations in San Francisco, and like this is such a great building to attach a permanent light or semi-permanent light structure to, and just wondering if that can be something to look at in the future.
So great question. I don't want to get too far off topic. We did have a subcommittee a couple of years ago that looked at that public art fund and where opportunities might be for a larger, more impactful, more permanent type project. Part of the challenge is trying to dovetail that with an existing project where there's going to be some construction anyway, as opposed to just intervening in an area where things are set and fine. And that hasn't come forward. So perhaps it's time to revisit that conversation.
I'm sure we all have more comments. I know I do, but I think we could vote for this if everyone's feeling ready to vote. So may I have a motion, please?
I enthusiastically move that we fund with that $300,000 for the code art project of projections.
Can I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor by roll call. Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
Commissioner Walczak,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Garza,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern,
No.
and Chair Gordon. Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Now we are moving on to our next action item. It's Code Art 2025. And we've been covering this, but Elise, maybe you'll give us just a quick recap of the
Overview, so-
specifics. Yes.
Yes, so I split these into two separate things because the projection is new and the intent is to use private dollars for that. This is for a major artwork at Lytton Plaza, which we had a pretty great one there last time. And 4 additional urban intervention projects in locations to be determined. So those would be in place for the period of the Code Art Festival. So Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. So these funds would come from the CIP fund, the base level allocation that we get from council that we generally use for temporary projects. Any questions from the public? Anyone out there? Okay. Just checking. Are there any questions from the commission?
So CIP funds,
Yes, capital improvement funds. So
A
there's the,
percentage of that
there's the percent for art that we get
from
from
development.
projects as part
Right.
of the budget cycle. And there's a baseline that we get because some years that, that percent for art number is
Correct.
quite low.
Yeah.
And so that pays for a portion of staff time for project management for those and for temporary public art.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on the second action item? Didn't want to miss Lisa.
And just to frame this, the way I understand it is last year for the anchoring artwork was here in this building. And so in lieu of funding and this was like 40,000 or right. So in lieu of this, we're going to get the light show, which will cover the first weekend plus another 7 days. Got it. Okay.
I move that we allocate the funds up to $70,000 from the Art in Public Places Capital Improvement Budget for a major installation on Lytton Plaza and for other artworks located in downtown.
Second,
Roll call voting. Commissioner De La Garza,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern,
Yes.
Commissioner Waltuck,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
yes.
and Vice Chair Shen.
Yes.
Thank you. Action item number 3.
It's non-code art related. Don't fall down from shock. But this is a donation of artwork by one of our Cubberley artists, Daryl T. Finn, who works in wood. And he has proposed this lovely piece. He does a lot of furniture, so a lot of his projects would not necessarily be sustainable for us to be able to care for or exhibit. And so he proposed a donation of Forever. It's a box, both because it took quite a long time, but also the history of the wood. So he likes to recycle wood that's already had a good history. So in his statement, he said this Forever is made of redwood and Douglas fir. The redwood is known as sinker redwood, which comes from Mendocino. Old growth redwood logs that were lost in river bottoms and never made it to the sawmills. The redwood has absorbed minerals over the past century to give it that purple gray hue. The redwood has, the old growth Douglas fir was reclaimed from the bookshelves of the Hoover Institution Library at Stanford. The name of the piece is both a reference to the time invested in building the box, as well as the history of the wood, the life it lived, and the life it will live into the future. And so just as a quick reminder for those who don't know that the Cubberley artists, in exchange for the subsidized rent, they do a certain amount of community service each year, and they do have a requirement to donate one artwork to the city collection. So this is his proposed donation.
Question.
Yes.
Once it becomes part of the city's collection, where can the public see it?
Well, everything is available for view online. We have to be careful where we install things so that they don't accidentally disappear or get damaged. So not everything is accessible to the public at all times, but everything is available online. And should someone want to see something in person, they can contact staff.
Okay,
Mhm.
great, thanks.
Even though this is a gift, I do believe we have to vote to accept it. So may I have a motion, please?
I motion to accept it.
Second,
I second accepting Mr. Dykeman's piece of future. What is it called?
Forever.
Forever, sorry. Thank you, forever.
thank you. Okay, roll call. Commissioner Waltuck,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes,
Commissioner Stern,
Yes.
Commissioner De La Garza,
Yes.
And Chair Gordon, yes. Thank you. That is a beautiful piece of work and I'm sure we'll see it someday. Thank you. Are there any public letters?
There have been no public letters.
I have to. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, or announcements? I will call this meeting to an end. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you for the very good discussion on our upcoming Code Art 2025. Good night.
Very excited.